Hello there, fellow cultists. This is DM Nell, and I'm back with another episode of Shadow Talk. This one is 114, and today we dive back into the core rulebook for Shadow the Demon Lord, and we tackle Chapter 7, Magic. This is a big chapter, so it may take a little bit, so hope you bear with me. But even before then, in my ever unprepared, unpracticed manner, I forgot to cover something in the last chapter. So just real quickly, going back to the equipment chapter, there's this little sidebar for special materials. And, you know, this is pretty important, especially when you are dealing with characters that are fairies. Elves, fawn, that sort of stuff. So special materials. Many people, such as fairies, cannot tolerate touching iron. They instead construct their armor and weapons from other materials, using bronze, bone, or wood. The prices for armor and weapons made from other materials are the same. Shattering weapons. When you attack with a weapon that is normally made of metal and that is made from a material other than metal, it is at risk of breaking. If the total of the roll is 0 or less, the weapon takes damage equal to its health and it breaks. So if you've got a sword made of bone or a sword made of bronze or, whatever, you have to take shattering weapons into consideration. Then you have silvered weapons. Weapons plated in silver are useful when fighting certain monstrous creatures. You can silver any weapon that has a material component by multiplying its price by 3. Silvered weapons count as exotic items. So, wanted to make sure that was covered. And I want to thank one of my listeners. I don't recall who it is off the top of my head, but thanks for pointing out that I missed the special materials section there. All right, so magic. Let's go tackle magic. So, magic. I've covered extensively in my videos before. But for the sake of completeness, I'm going to go over a lot of this stuff again, so I apologize for repeating information I've already covered, but it is what I must do. So there you go. All right, so magic makes the impossible possible. It is chaos that strains against order's imposition. The potential that resides in all things. Magic suffuses the world, unseen, unfelt, waiting for commands from those individuals with the power to wield it. This chapter describes the most common ways to magic manifests in the world. In its true form, magic is wild and unpredictable. Only when manipulated by a being with a magical talent does it conform to the wielder's intent and produce a desired outcome as a spell. All creatures have the potential to use magic, measured in the game by power. The source of magic capacity varies from individual to individual: an ancient relic, inborn talent, academic training, faith in a distant god, or any number of other possibilities. So magic is an inherent part of this system. If you want to run a Shadow of the Demon Lord game that has low magic, then you're really going to have to do some work to eliminate those paths where magic can be accessed. I really can't think of a way to have Shadow of the Demon Lord and have it be a low magic system other than limiting the power level that a character might get. So in some paths it says +1 power. You could cap that. Right now the cap is at 5. You could cap that at, say, 3. But even then, you still have a lot of spells at your disposal. I don't know. I mean, it would be something you would have to think about. Okay, so gods and monsters talks about that you can get magic from gods, and some monsters are inherently magical as well. Magical heritage. Some individuals discover within themselves potential control magic. Sometimes this manifests during emotional distress, pain, loss, or terror. Objects of power. Certain objects of power have magic inherent in them or placed in them. Let's see, scholarship. You can get magic through studying it. And it talks about at the Empire's height, magical academies trained students in all the great cities. Foremost of these was the Tower Arcane, which still drifts through the skies above the old imperial capital of Caicrus. In rural areas, wizards, witches, and others take on apprentices to pass down what they have learned. All right, traditions of magic. All spells belong to traditions. Each tradition describes a category of magical effects that share common characteristics. The fire tradition, for example, comprises spells that create, manipulate, and otherwise interact with fire and heat. Spells from the life tradition heal the injured and cure the afflicted. Associated attributes. Each tradition falls under one of these two attributes, either intellect or will, and you got a chart here that shows which falls under which. Discovering traditions. So to cast spells associated with a tradition, you must discover the tradition. You might learn it from a dusty tome in a lost library, undergo instruction by a master wizard, or have it revealed to you by one of the ephemeral genies. If your path allows you to discover magical traditions, its description tells you when you can do so. Discovery indicates you have learned the fundamental techniques required to cast spells from the tradition, represented by one of its rank 0 spells. So basically what that's saying is the path that you choose tells you when you learn a tradition or when you can learn a tradition. And when you do learn a tradition, you automatically get one of its rank 0 spells. And each of these traditions in the core rulebook have 2 rank 0 spells listed. So you can pick one of those rank 0 spells. The exception to that would be the magician, who gets both rank 0 spells when they discover a tradition. Dark magic traditions. Certain traditions reveal fearful secrets known as dark magic. You gain 1 corruption each time you discover a dark magic tradition. That's important. As well, each time you learn a spell from a dark magic tradition, roll a d6. If the number is less than the total number of dark magic spells you have learned, you gain 1 corruption. As well, just highlight the whole thing. However, each dark magic spell you learn grants 1 boon on challenge rolls you make to avoid gaining insanity. So this is, important information for those rotten bastards that choose dark magic traditions and dark magic spells. Spells. A spell is a codified or codified magical effect in the world with a predictable or mostly predictable outcome whenever it is cast. Anyone who has discovered the tradition to which the spell belongs, or who reads the spell as an incantation, can cast a spell. Learning spells. If your path allows you to use magic, its rules text tells you when you can learn a new spell. When your path instructs you to do so, you choose 1 spell from a tradition you have discovered and whose rank is equal to or lower than your power score. So you can never learn a spell whose rank is higher than your current power score. So, like I said earlier, if you're wanting to limit the amount of magic that is available in your campaign, then you can limit the power, or you could cap the power score, or at least slow its progression that way. Exchanging spells. Whenever you have learned a new spell, you can exchange a spell you have previously learned for another spell of the same or lower rank. Such adjustments reflect the changing nature of magic and the development of your character's abilities. Now, this is a nice one to know, and so I'm highlighting here because you may pick a spell thinking, yeah, that sounds pretty cool, and never end up using it. Just for whatever reason, maybe you thought that maybe you picked in some enchantment spells, and your campaign is mostly dungeon delving, where you're not able to interact with sentient creatures much to be able to use them. So those spells are pretty much wasted. So work with your DM on that, but this does allow you to exchange a spell for another spell the same rank or lower. All right, casting a spell. You cast a spell, you have learned, by following the sequence. Speak the words. Unless otherwise mentioned in the tradition's description, you must speak a mystic word or phrase to cast a spell. If you are prevented from speaking, you cannot cast a spell. So that's important to know right there. Wield the implement. You must have an implement of magic to cast a spell. An implement can be a wand, an amulet, a holy symbol, sacrificial knife, tome, or something else that's important to you. To attune an object, you must concentrate for 1 hour, during which time you maintain contact with it. At the end of this time, the implement becomes attuned to you until you become attuned to a different implement. So that whole paragraph is pretty important. All right. So, use an action. You use an action to cast a spell. Some spells can be cast using a triggered action, while others require you to concentrate for a period of time, and the spell will tell you. Expend the casting. So you have a limited number of castings of each spell you learn. Your power score determines the number of castings you have for each spell by rank, as shown in the castings table. For example, if you have power 2 and you know 2 rank 0 spells, 1 rank 1 spell and 1 rank 2 spell, you have 3 castings of each rank 0 spell, 2 castings of the rank 1 spell, and 1 casting of the rank 2 spell. You must have at least 1 unexpended casting of a spell to cast it. When you successfully cast a spell, you expend the casting of it. So that can be confusing for a lot of folks that just get started in the game. So looking at this table up here, let's say you've got power 2. And you've got, as a result of that, you've got 3 rank 0 spells, 2 rank 1 spells, and 2 rank 1 spells and 1 rank 2 spells. So the number listed in this chart tells you how many times you can cast each of your spells. This isn't like spell slots in D&D. You can cast each of your rank 0 spells 3 times. So that means if you have 3 rank 0 spells, you have 9 castings, 3 for each of your spells. For your rank 1 spells, you've got 2 of those spells, so you have you have 2 of those spells, so you have 4 castings, and then you have 1 casting of your rank 2 spell. Okay, so anyway, 9 castings, 4 castings, 1 casting of each. Yeah, so I'm confusing myself even just talking about it, as you can see. So for each spell, that is how many times, the number listed on this chart is how many times you can cast each spell. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, so what else do we have here? Regained expended castings. You regain all expended castings you spell when you complete a rest and spend at least 1 minute in meditation, study, or performing a ceremony or ritual. All right, spell descriptions. This basically shows you how the spells are formatted. I'm not going to go over that. Top line. Spell's name, the requirement, the target, awareness. You must be aware of a creature or object to target it with a spell. The spell cannot be hidden from you. Some spells require you to be able to see the target. So basically, if it has a target line here, if it says target 1 creature, you have to be aware of the creature in order to be able to target it. Targeting yourself, unwilling target, obscurement. If an attack spell directs you to choose a target you can see and your intended target is in an obscured area, your attack roll is subject to 1 or more banes depending on the degree of obscurement. So that's important. But we covered obscurement back in an earlier chapter. Same with cover. When you cast an attack spell against a covered creature's defense or agility, your attack roll is subject to 1 or more banes. And we covered that back in chapter 2. If a spell allows an agility challenge roll to resist its effect, the target may benefit from intervening cover. Half cover grants 1 boon on the roll. Quarters cover grants 2 boons. A totally covered target is not affected by the spell unless the spell spreads around the cover and can reach the target. Fragile materials such as cloth, glass, and paper might not provide cover at all at the GM's discretion. And then targeting objects, unless the spell's text says otherwise, a spell specifying a target object can affect only an object you wear, carry, or an object that is neither worn nor carried by another creature. So you want to read that section carefully. Area. Some spells have no specific target but affect the space defined by an area. The origin point. All affected area effects have an origin point that you choose within the range specified by the spell. This point is where the area is centered or where it originates from. If you're using a gridded map for visual reference, the origin point is always on an intersection. And you got size and shape. This entry describes the size and shape of the spell's area. The area always conforms to the open space in which it's cast. For example, if a spell creates a cube of poisonous gas 8 yards on a side, you cast a spell in a smaller space, the spell effect would fill the available space and extend no further. You can always choose to reduce the size of a spell's area. For example, if a spell would affect a cube 4 yards on a side, you could make the cube 2 yards on a side instead. When the rules describe an area effect or an area of space, the area must be open, that is, not fully occupied by other creatures or objects. You have cones extend away from their origin points. For each 1 yard of the cone's length, it gains 1 yard of height and width. Thus, a 3-yard cone would be 1 yard wide and tall in the first yard, 2 yards wide and tall in the second, and 3 yards wide and tall at its maximum length. Lines extend away from their origin points, maintaining a constant width. Lines might also have a height, producing a wall-like effect. Some lines are shapeable, which allow you to bend them at 90-degree angles. For each 1 yard of the line's length, you can change its direction once. And then you have a cylinder and cylinders and spheres. Center on origin points and extend in all directions from them. Cubes extend away from their origin points. The point can lie on a corner or on a side of the cube. Cover and obscurement. Creatures and objects are affected in areas affected by spells do not benefit from obscurement. A creature or object in a spell's area can benefit from cover for agility challenge rolls to resist the spell's effect if the cover lies between it and the spell's origin point. Half cover grants 1 boon to the roll. 3/4 covers blah blah blah. This is covered that already. Spreads. If the spell description states that it spreads through the area, its effects move around obstacles out to the area's maximum distance. Creatures in the area of such spells do not benefit from cover. There you go. Range. So range is talked about in the chapter 2. We already covered that. Duration. This line tells you how long a spell's effect lasts. The spell takes effect instantaneously if this line is absent. Some attack spells take effect instantaneously but produce ongoing effects. They do not have a duration entry. Then you've got end of round. The effect continues until the end of the round in which the spell was cast. 1 round. The effect continues until the end of the round following the round in which the spell was cast. Concentration. The spell normally lasts for 1 round, but you can use the concentration action to extend its duration as described in Chapter 2. Then you have persistence. Summoned or created creatures or items as well as illusions remain in existence for the spell's duration unless destroyed before then and can freely leave the area in which they appeared unless stationary. All right. Voluntarily ending an effect. You can use an action to end a spell's effect before its duration expires. Effect. This entry describes what happens when you cast a spell. It's essentially a series of instructions. So you have attack, you have damage, You have what happens if your attack roll is 20 plus? Well, extra things can happen, just like with attacks from path traits. Other effects, moving a target, and combining spell effects. I'm not going to read through those, but these things you should reference when and if it comes into play. For attack rolls of 20 plus, I do want to point out, and I pointed this out before as well, in the, I think it was the combat section, but if you roll, if it has a line that says attack roll 20 plus, this only applies if the attack roll was 20 or higher and exceeds the score of the attribute or the characteristics by 5 or more. So if the employee if the target's defense was 20 and you rolled 22, that's not by, you didn't exceed the target's defense by 5 or more. Even though the attack roll was 20 or higher, you still have to exceed its characteristic that you're targeting by 5 or more. So that's important to know. In fact, let me just highlight that whole deal. Let's see here. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, some have some spells require a sacrifice, and some spells can be made permanent. Okay, so that is all the things describing a spell, and a lot of these things are pretty intuitive, so that's why I didn't read these. Like damage is pretty intuitive, so if you really need to go over that, then I'll trust that you will use your ocular orbs to absorb the knowledge into your brain masses. All right, so what else? Okay, this chapter now goes into spells. So there are a shit ton of spells in this chapter, and I can't go through all the spells. But what I can do is go through each tradition and just kind of highlight what the tradition stands for, and maybe touch on a couple of the spells that I think are cool. But to be honest with you, I've run 5 campaigns now, and I still haven't had characters use every tradition. And incidentally, there are more traditions in other supplements, such as the Demon Lord's Companion and Occult Philosophy, as well as other supplements. So we start off with the air tradition. So the air tradition is exactly what you would think it would be. You are masters of wind. So once you've discovered your tradition, the air always moves around you. It stirs your hair, rustles your clothing, and whispers in your ear. Some find the constant motion maddening. You might take comfort from the ever-present companionship of your favorite element. So each time you cast an air spell, the air moving around you picks up speed, just enough to cause flames to flicker and to disturb lightweight objects. So I love the little effect, like the special effect that comes with just learning certain spells. All right, so with this one you can do cool things like bestow flight, fling. You can toss things around. All right, alteration. So alteration magic changes the fundamental capabilities of creatures and bestows on them new properties, abilities, or traits. Learned magic users commonly study this tradition. Both witches and wizards appreciate the advantages its spells grant to themselves and to their allies. Since alteration magic augments and transforms, it's believed to tap into the more chaotic aspects of magical energy. Some students of the tradition discover it after exposure to raw, uncontrolled magic, further lending credence to this theory. Your study of such magic often results in physical changes. At first, these are subtle. A scar or a blemish appears, or facial features soften. Extensive study leads to more profound changes. You might lose all pigment from your body, or have indistinct features. The most powerful masters of alteration magic are rumored to have no faces at all. So again, you've got actual, just learning and becoming a master of this tradition physically changes you. So what do we have here? We have stuff like distort appearance, alter size, regeneration, malleability. What is that? You touch the target for the duration, it can move at its full speed, blah, 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 blah. As well, for the duration, the target cannot fall prone. Okay. All right, so Arcana, this is one of my favorites for magicians. The oldest form of magic known to mortals, Arcana represents the sum of magical research conducted by wizards for thousands of years. Spells from the tradition offer reliability, having been refined and perfected by the masters. All right, so you have Arcane Armor. You have Magic Dart, which is similar to Magic Missile for you D&D folks. Arcane Shield is similar to Shield, although not quite as good. Let's see what else we have. Unerring Darts is a better version than Magic Dart. Explosive Darts is an even better version than Unerring Darts. Empowered Magic is let's say it's a rank 2 spell. For the duration, when you cast an attack spell, you make any required attack rolls with 1 boon, and challenge rolls made to resist are made with 1 bane. This one here becomes important when you start fighting demons and creatures that have inherent resistance to magic. To be able to offset that inherent resistance, you definitely need empowered magic to counteract that. Otherwise, you're always going to be at a disadvantage when fighting demons and those types of creatures. Fairy creatures also have that inherent resistance to magic. Arcane Lightning, that's like the Emperor from Star Wars. So at least how I envision it. Let's see, Destroy Magic, it's like Dispel Magic. Harness Magic, this lets you utilize more castings than you normally have. And then Arcane Retribution is a very cool spell. Boosts your magical ability significantly. Plus you gain +5 bonus to your defense. So Arcane Retribution, one of my faves. Of course, it's a rank 5 spell, so you got to be, up there in order to get it. But once you get there, definitely a must-have. All right, battle. Lots of people that they're past dabble in magic like to choose the battle tradition. Battle spells awaken and enhance combat capabilities. Armed with these spells, battlecasters can fight with skill rivaling that of the greatest warriors in the land. They move with enhanced speed and dexterity, strike with uncommon precision, and send their foes reeling. However, they can also succumb to battle madness. If you know any spells from the battle tradition, you are at the risk of battle madness. Whenever you go mad, you suffer battle madness instead of rolling on the madness table. While gripped by battle madness, you must take a fast turn each round and use an action to attack the creature nearest to you, making a charge if necessary. You regard all creatures as foes, determining your target randomly if more than one is available. At the end of each round, roll a d6. On a roll of 5 or higher, the battle madness ends. All right, so blah, blah. What else is going on here? Discovering this tradition typically results from combat training. When one's mettle is tested and the blood boils in the heat of battle, sometimes a weapon strike carries added magical might. So lots of cool magical enhancing or battle enhancing magic here. All right, Celestial. Spells from Celestial tradition call on light and energy of the sun and stars to drive back the darkness spreading across the world. So you have such favorites as Burning Beam, just a typical light spell. Rainbow Burst. You might think that would be a spray of Skittles at your opponent, but strangely enough, it is not. So be sure to read that spell. Well, let's see what else we have. Sunrays, Radiation, Starfall, and Nova Sunbeam. Very cool spells in the Celestial tradition. All right, Chaos. Chaos spells draw on destructive magic, making them unpredictable and dangerous. So what do we have here? We have Fold Space, Iridescent Shield, Color of Magic. Wild Magic is always a fan favorite. You got a table here that describes the various forms that the magic can take, and you roll a d20 to randomly determine it. So that's very cool. Singularity, yeah. Singularity can be a pretty destructive spell. The sorcerer that I had in my last campaign picked Singularity, and that was a pretty badass spell. Conjuration. Conjuration spells create objects and creatures from threads of magical energy. This tradition requires keen mind and deft hand. Not long after you learn your first conjuration spell, you begin to hear a constant faint humming noise. Oh wow! I guess I must have learned conjuration spells because I've had a faint humming noise in my head for the last 30 years. Actually, it's not so faint anymore. The sound grows in intensity as you learn more spells from the tradition. Manifestation of your ability to perceive magical energy you weave into creatures and object. The humming doesn't interfere with your abilities, but it is always with you. Yeah, thanks for that. All right, so conjuration, direct conjuration, conjure feast, conjure monster, conjure weapon. All right, so conjure monster basically allows you to conjure a compelled monster of various sizes depending on the rank of the spell that you're using. So you might want to have your GM provide you with the monster stat blocks for each of the compelled or each of the size categories of monsters, so that you have that handy and you can know what your monsters can do. And that is in the, you can find the stat block in the bestiary section, chapter 10. We'll get to that eventually. All right, so conjuring shit. That's always cool. The curse tradition. So curse magic, often taught by hags and corrupt witches, spread misfortune and woe, stripping away a victim's vitality, or as Popeye says, vitality, courage, and even form. Lifting curses. Anything capable of ending a spell effect can lift a curse created by this tradition. You can use an action to lift the curse if you can see the target creature and it is within medium range. So GMs, you might want to adjudicate this to make curses a little bit more potent. Anything that is capable of ending a spell effect is pretty broad. You might want to limit that to specific spells that can lift a curse. Otherwise, curses really can, just aren't that, impactful or scary for that matter. A curse should be scary. If you get cursed, it should be something that scares the shit out of you and lasts for a while until you have to jump through hoops to figure out how to lift the curse, in my humble opinion. Okay, so curse spells. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff there. Swine is one of my favorites. You turn an animal, or you turn a target into a pig, or toad. You can turn a target into a toad. So these two spells can mess with your campaign. I had a difficulty 500 dragon attack one of attack my party. I had an encounter with a designed with a difficulty 500 dragon, and the witch in the party turned it into a toad. So this can, like I said, it can ruin an encounter. So you want to read up on these things before your witch or whoever chooses the curse tradition fucks up your encounter designs. Swine isn't as bad, but toad will definitely ruin your day as a DM. Let's see here. What is after that? Destruction. Okay, destruction is... oh, wait, I forgot. Control dolls. These are funny. You can create a control doll that becomes bound to one creature. To make a doll, you must expend special ingredients worth 1 silver shilling and have something from the creature's body, such as a bit of nail, hair, or blood. It takes 1 hour to fashion the doll. While you hold the doll, you make attack rolls with curse spells against that creature with 1 boon, and it makes challenge rolls to resist your curse spells with 1 bane. So that's like a voodoo doll. Excellent. Destruction is one of my favorite traditions. Wielders of destruction magic rest its power through sheer force of will, causing creatures and objects to explode, but harming themselves in the process. The cost of this mastery is revealed in the many bruises and injuries afflicting their body. So you generally take damage, but the target takes, it has an effect on the target. So the lovely thing about this tradition is that many times there's no roll to attack and there's no roll to resist. It just happens. The price that you pay for that certainty is that you take damage from casting a spell. Now that's not for every spell. So for example, this spell right here, Ruin, if the target takes a d6 damage, if it is a creature, it must make a strength challenge roll, becoming fatigued for 1 minute on a failure. So there are aspects of it that allow for challenge rolls to resist a portion of the spell effect. But like it says here, you take 1 damage, and then the target takes a d6 damage. There's no save. There's no roll to hit. It just happens. So yeah, you cast your spell, a big gash opens up in your chest, and the target takes a d6 damage. That's pretty cool. I love that shit. And it just gets more powerful from there. So yeah, that's one of my favorites. Divination. Divination magic reveals possible futures and the distant past. Those who discover this tradition are often born with the talent and see past and future events, or become aware of it through a latent psychic ability. In very rare cases, divination magic results from a supernatural gift. So the usual suspects are in here, as you might imagine. I'm not going to go through all that stuff. But again, some of these things can ruin encounters or mysteries that you may have set up in your campaign, so you might want to read through those if you have a character that is selecting the divination tradition. Earth. This tradition grants power over soil and stone and soil, and those who master it can compel the earth beneath their feet to obey their commands. Earth magic arises from genies dwelling in the bones of the land, high mountains, rolling hills, and shifting deserts. Practitioners of this tradition gradually assume a stony appearance. So lots of cool earth magic spells there. Earthquake, you gotta love that. Mold, earth, and stone. Okay, you can there's an eruption. You can make a little mini volcano here. All right, enchantment. Enchantment magic twists the emotions of other creatures to make them obedient servants. Some discover enchantment tradition from the fairy, who use it to beguile mortals. Such beings might teach the tradition to individuals they befriend or in exchange for service. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so again, the usual suspects are found in the enchantment tradition. I'm not going to go through all those. Fire magic creates and controls flame. Discovering this tradition, often from binding a genie, enhances your innate volatility. Your skin becomes hot to the touch. Your eyes literally blaze in anger, and you are always on the verge of losing your temper. So you've got such fan favorites as Meteor, Fiery Volley, Fireball, of course. Wall of Flames, of course. Okay, so now we get to one of the more controversial traditions, and it is the Forbidden tradition. So any dark magic tradition has this little Demon Lord symbol next to it so that you can recognize it for what it is. And Forbidden is one of the worst and most awesome traditions. But beware, it is not for the faint of heart, the weak of will, the easily butthurt, or just in general, it's not for pussies. So, if you're any of the above, then you might want to skip this tradition and fast forward ahead. All right, so the darkest of the dark arts. Forbidden spells produce horrid and unspeakable effects. Most societies outlaw the use of such magic. Inquisitors and witch hunters alike scour the countryside for its wielders, consigning any they capture to the purifying flames, along with all their implements and writings. Yet, somehow the vile tradition persists, and new users appear all over the world in greater and greater numbers. It's because it's awesome. Devils whisper the secrets of forbidden magic to mortals, seeking quick routes to power. In doing so, they prepare a future feast, since learning spells from this tradition corrupts the souls. Seekers might also discover the forbidden magic from the cultists of the Demon Lord, unearth its secrets from ancient tomes, read horrific runes smeared in places of great and terrible evil, or receive the power as a gift from evil entities trapped in the world. After you complete a rest, you must sacrifice a creature to the dark powers to regain expended castings of your forbidden spells. All right, so you may want to put some parameters around that. I'm speaking to you, GMs, because what your enterprising and inventive character is going to say is they're going to have a bag of ants and they're going to sacrifice an ant every time they cast a forbidden spell. No. This should be a significant sacrifice. So it should be, at the very least, it should be a rat or a bunny or a dog or something, significant enough to warrant regaining the expenditure of a forbidden spell. So, you might want to outline that up front when you start your campaign. If you choose to go the forbidden path, you're going to be doing some pretty vile things to little creatures. Or, if you choose to do larger creatures even, you can do that. But, you do so at your own risk. So anyway, all right. So what are some of the, what could be so bad about the forbidden tradition? Well, let's take a look. So the low level spells aren't that bad, or the low rank spells. The Black Tongue is nice because for the duration you make intellect and will attack rolls with one boon against demons, devils, spirits, and undead. Again, that kind of helps with offsetting some of the protections that demons and the such have. Harm, invisible barbs tear at the target's body. Make an intellect attack roll versus against the target's strength. On a success, target takes a -5 penalty to health for 1 minute. Obedience, you hook the target's soul. Make an intellect attack roll against its will. On a success, for the next 1 minute, the target must choose at the end of each round whether to take a d6 damage or become compelled for 1 round. Compelled by the caster. So that's cool. Then we have the infamous Hateful Defecation, which is only a rank 1 spell. Oh, but what a spell it is. So the target's guts twist and rumble noisily. If the target's health is 10 or less, it dies instantly. Streams of blood and feces gushing from all of its orifices. If its health is higher than 10, make an intellect attack roll against the target's strength. On a success, the target takes 1d6 plus 2 damage, not that much, right? And becomes dazed for a round, as its guts violently and spectacularly expel their contents. If this damage incapacitates the target, excrement, organs, and blood explode from its body, which instantly brings about its death. Each creature within 2 yards of a point within the target space must make a will challenge roll. On a failure, it becomes impaired for a round just because of the spectacular expulsion. On an attack roll of 20 plus, the target takes an extra d6 damage. Okay, so, it's not really that powerful. It's only good, really, for the most part, against low-level creatures. But boy, this brings about some horrid visualization. All right, Tongue Rip. You spit at the target. On a success, your tongue forks and you take over the target's mouth for as long as you concentrate, up to 1 hour. So you speak out of the target's mouth, and you can, you could potentially be in a crowd as the king is giving a speech and take over the king's mouth and watch the hilarity ensue. Ravenous Maggots. So when you cast this spell on one living creature, hungry maggots fill the target's belly, dealing 2d6 damage to it. At the end of each round, for the duration, the target must make a strength challenge roll. On a failure, it takes a d6 damage and becomes impaired for a round. On a success, there's no effect. On the third success, the target vomits a knot of squirming maggots and the effect ends. A target that becomes incapacitated from the spell's damage dies instantly, and a cloud of black flies spread through a 5-yard radius sphere from a point within its space. The flies heavily obscure the area and remain for 1 minute or until dispersed by fire or wind. Okay, so before I forget, here is a sidebar. It says Dark Magic, Dark Speech. Casting forbidden spells requires speaking mystic phrases in dark speech. If you don't know this language, you make attack rolls using forbidden spells with 1 bane, and creatures make challenge rolls to resist your forbidden spells with 1 boon. So, if you're going to pick this tradition, you have to pick up dark magic. All right, Vision's End. This basically makes the target's eyes explode. Desire's End. This basically makes their genitals fall off or shrivel up if it's the fairer sex. Part bone from flesh. I love this spell because it makes the target's skeleton try to escape the target's body. And if it succeeds, it becomes an animated corpse. So that's awesome. Soul exchange. You swap souls between 2 people. And that can be cool. And then horrid joining is you take 2 people and you fuse them together and they become one conglomerate creature that is horrible to behold. I've not seen either of those 2 spells work just quite yet, but before I retire from running Shadow the Demon Lord, it's going to happen. All right, illusion magic. Illusion magic fools the senses. Students of illusion magic use it to construct their own realities, preferring the false world it offers to the harsh reality around them. Kind of like video game players. With a wave of a hand, they fashion illusory clothing made from the finest materials. So I'm imagining Loki when I think of illusion magic. So I'm not going to go through all the illusion spells. There's a sidebar on how to discern illusions. But illusion magic isn't one of my favorites. I don't really dig it. All right, life. This is picked up quite frequently by characters choosing to run priests and clerics. So you will come to know this tradition pretty quickly. Life magic eases pain, heals wounds, and removes afflictions. Many people discover the tradition by studying at the fabled Houses of Healing, an institution founded long ago to fight plagues and alleviate suffering. Upon completing the training, each new life practitioner receives a tattoo of a hand, palm out, on the right cheek, and is given a crimson cloak to signify commitment to healing. The tradition finds great favor among servants of gods, since performing such miracles fosters devotion in those who receive their blessings. In particular, most priests of the new god devote some of their studies to the life tradition. All right, so as you can imagine, there are healing spells in here, but the one thing that I have a problem with is the cure spell. It's too good. And I'll tell you why. With one spell, you can resolve for 4 different things. You can resolve for removing an affliction from the target, which can be diseased. So you can remove a disease. You got a target that has cancer with a 1st rank spell, you can cure that disease. I think removing diseases should be a little bit harder than that, but that's just me. Fatigued, impaired, or poisoned. So again, poison. You get poisoned with a rank 1 spell, you can remove the poison. So it makes being poisoned not that big a deal, when it should be a bigger deal. Now, obviously, it's a big deal if you don't have a priest or a cleric in your party, but still. Removing 1 insanity from the target. So with this rank 1 spell, within the course of a few days, you can remove all insanity from anybody that has maxed out their insanity. Because it makes it, again, a little bit too easy to get rid of insanity. Remove any penalty to the target's health, or the target heals damage equal to half its healing rate. I think, in my humble opinion, each one of these bullet points should be its own spell. So that at least forces the person that is taking the life tradition to choose which of these things they're going to focus on. So that you have a priest of healing diseases, or you have a priest of healing insanity, or you have a priest that focuses on healing damage. just having one spell that covers all these things just is way too convenient and way too easy to bypass a lot of the things in the game that should make life difficult for characters. Now you could argue that these things shouldn't be difficult for characters. They should be difficult for, the general population, the little people. But for characters, they shouldn't be having to go through, a couple of levels being diseased. I say, yeah, they should. And insanity should definitely be harder to remove than just with a rank 1 spell. But anyway, that's just me. Your mileage may vary. Okay, so what else do we have here? Just lots of healing, and finally you have a way to resurrect people. Okay, then we have the nature tradition. Devotees of the old faith are the most common users of nature magic. They see the tradition spells as expression of their religion and incorporate them into their rites. So, as you can imagine, the different things that you would find for druid spells in D&D, you're going to find something similar here in this tradition. We have a sidebar for armor abhorrence. Those who deal in the nature tradition need to maintain closeness to nature. Heavy armor is abhorrent to such casters. You cannot cast nature spells while wearing heavy armor. All right, we have another dark magic tradition here, and this one is necromancy. Necromancy subverts the cycle of life and death by creating beings that exist between both states. Its mysteries are hidden in profane tomes or etched on the walls of ancient tombs. And so seekers must brave shuffling hordes of undead and embrace corruption to master such magic. Yeah. All right, so the usual suspects here are found. Hide from undead, animate corpse, grave grasp, shrieking skull, army of the dead. What is that? So, army of the dead. The area becomes difficult terrain at the end of the round in which you cast a spell. 2d6 compelled animated corpses claw free from the ground and immediately begin doing the thriller dance. Now, and stand up. All the animated corpses created by this spell count as a single creature for the purposes of determining how many compelled undead creatures you can control. The effect ends when the last of these animated corpses is destroyed. Okay, so that is necromancy. So then we have the primal tradition. Spells from the primal tradition forge bonds with animals and awaken bestial traits in their casters. Most who discover primal magic pledge service to and commune with the gods of the old faith. Others might come into its power through reading the runes inscribed on old monoliths, studying cave paintings left by beastmen, or becoming possessed by one of the nature spirits that inhabit the wildest places. The more primal magic you learn, the more animalistic your appearance becomes. Body hair often grows more profusely, while eye color shifts to amber, silver, or bright gold. Lots of animal-related stuff here. You can call beasts, you can make a dire beast, you can pounce, call huge animals. There you go. All right. Protection magic defines, defends, and counteracts. Its spells appeal to the cautious and the paranoid, since it keeps them and their belongings safe. As you learn spells from the tradition, you become increasingly suspicious of others, including your companions. So we have such things as magic lock, force field, vigilance, protection from spells, invulnerability, and globe of negation. Okay, then we have rune magic tradition. Rune spells create writings that produce magical effects. Dwarves or trolls invented rune magic. Many of their first rune spells survive carved into ancient monoliths and on cave walls in old mountains. Discovering the tradition might result from stumbling across such writings. I love the idea of the spell. I haven't seen it put into much use, but definitely this has a very Warhammery feel to it. So lots of different effects coming from rune magic. Shadow. Shadow magic creates and shapes shadows in darkness. A shadow tradition skirts the edges of what most consider dark magic, although it is not. As you can see, there's no dark magic indicator there. Though its magic lacks the corrupting influence of such spells. Students of dark magic traditions often supplement their studies with shadow spells to conceal their activities and destroy their foes. Some believe the tradition originated in the underworld. All right, exploring shadow secrets gradually drains color and vitality from you. Your clothing fades more quickly. Your hair loses its luster and your complexion becomes almost chalky. You find light uncomfortable and must shield your eyes from the stinging brightness, usually by donning a hooded cloak. Although you become uncomfortable in lit areas, the tradition does not cause light to harm you. Nightfall Blade is one of my favorites. You call into being basically a solid blade of darkness, which visually I find to be cool. It doesn't do much, but it's very cool just to envision a dark lightsaber basically forming in your hand. You have Wall of Darkness. You have Shadow Dart, darkness, just general darkness. Black Bolts of the Underworld, Shadow Magic, Dark Portals, and Enervation. All right, then we have songs. Song spells weave magic into music to affect the minds of those who hear it performed. Casting spells from the tradition requires you to sing or play music. So this would be your bardic type stuff, which I'm not a fan of. Not going to read any of it. Storm tradition offers casters the ability to create and control weather in its most violent forms. So you can create fog, you can call lightning, fork lightning, freezing fog, poisonous fog, hailstorm, lightning bolt, acid rain, and leaping lightning. Lots of cool options there. And then we have Technomancy. Technomancy tradition merges magic with machinery. When you cast a Technomancy spell, you assemble something from spare parts and rubbish you have harvested during your travels. You can usually reuse these parts, dismantling the devices you create to make something new. Practitioners of this tradition are always on the lookout for materials, cogs, springs, metal sheeting, nuts, bolts, tubing, and the like. So this one's a little bit difficult to wrap your brain around because it's magic and yet it's technology. So this is actually a merger of the two things. I tend to think of technology in Shadow of the Demon Lord as being its own thing, which follows the normal rules of technology, and magic being its own thing. So Technomancy kind of merges the two. So it doesn't really follow all the rules of technology. So and what I mean by that basically is that you don't have to build something from scratch, and once it's built, it remains built, and it is that thing until you destroy it. Technomancy basically takes a bunch of unrelated parts that you just collect and keep in your bag or carry on your back or whatever, on your backpack, and you use the magic to assemble them into something that you want. So you could just have a bunch of springs and cogs and a couple of iron tubes and sheets, and you can create a flamethrower out of that, or you can create caltrops, or you can create grenades, or you can create a powered suit. So, but the parts, the individual parts that you have don't necessarily have to look like the end result, or look like it's going to result in the end result. So, don't let the concept of, well, you need all the ingredients to a power suit in order to build a power suit. No, that's not how this magic works. The magic just takes whatever parts you have on hand and creates the thing that you're envisioning. So it's easier for me to think of it that way. And yes, you can have a power suit. Very cool. All right, then you have the teleportation tradition. Teleportation magic locates gaps in reality and opens them wide enough to let a traveler pass through to a distant destination. Lots of cool stuff here, and what I like about this tradition is that it doesn't just allow you to travel from place 1 to place 2. It also allows you to use teleportation in ways that you can attack creatures by, well, division is a good example. You make an intellect attack roll against the target's strength. On a success, the target takes 3d6 damage. If the target becomes incapacitated by this damage, pieces of its body fly apart, killing it instantly. So you're basically teleporting parts of its body apart, which is very cool. I love the name of the spell, Hole of Glory. It's awesome. So yeah, teleportation is a pretty cool tradition. All right, theurgy. Magic relies on faith, as you might imagine. A student of theurgy must be pious at all times and display constant devotion to the gods he or she serves. Such acts give the caster the means to produce miracles, proof of the god's existence. Mostly associated with the cult of the new god. Priests use theurgy magic as a weapon in their ongoing crusade to stamp out cults, eradicate demons and the undead, and safeguard the world from the looming annihilation. Members of this faith believe their power comes directly from the new god or from its greatest prophet, Astrid. When you cast a theurgy spell, a brief manifestation of the divine occurs somewhere in your presence. For example, a tongue of burning fire burning in the air above your head, trembling in the ground, flaming scripture appearing on a target, a surface, or in the air. Such manifestations only last a moment, but might impress the dubious and skeptical with a clear sign of divine favor. All right, so you can create a holy symbol, you can denounce, you can bless people. Bless is pretty nice. You touch each target, and it's any number of creatures you can reach. For the duration, which is 1 minute, the targets make attack rolls and challenge rolls with 1 boon and cannot be frightened. Again, that is a rank 1 spell, and you are mitigating a pretty potent affliction. All right, what else do we have? Hollow Ground, Godhammer, Wrath of God, Fire from Heaven, lots of cool godlike spells there. All right, the time tradition. Time magic controls the rate at which time passes. Meddling with time spells can upset or snarl your timeline and cause strange phenomenon to affect you. You might, for example, flicker in and out of existence while you sleep, or your apparent age could increase or decrease from one day to the next. This tradition, from what I understand, I've not seen anybody choose this tradition yet, but this tradition can be gonzo in your campaign. All right, so why is that? Well, let's just kind of read through it here. So let's see, what do we have? Minor Paradox. 1 creature you can see within short range. Make an intellect attack roll against the target's intellect. On a success, the target ceases to exist for 1 round. It reappears in its former space or in the nearest open space if it is occupied. So for 1 round, you just bloop, it's gone. You either teleported it back to the dawn of time or out to the future for 1 round. All right, what else do we have? Rewrite Moment. Once per round for the duration, when you roll a die, you can discard the number and roll the die again. That's pretty cool. Slow. Accelerate. That's kind of like slow and speed, or slow and haste in D&D. Decelerate. Twain Self. Cube large enough to hold a creature, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You cause yourself from the future to appear in the area, and it remains in your time for the duration. Until the spell ends, you and your future self can take a turn every round, though the paradox of your twained existence imposes 1 bane on both of your attack rolls and challenge rolls. You and your future self have identical attributes and characteristics, although you can act separately, and you and your future self count as 1 creature for the purpose of sharing resources. Thus, if one takes damage or gains insanity, it applies to both characters. If one expends the casting of a spell, the casting is expended for both. If one of you suffers an affliction or would benefit from an ongoing effect, the affliction and effect apply to both. Your future self has identical copies of everything you wear and carry, with a couple of exceptions. First, if you or your duplicate consume or expend an item, such as dealing a healing potion, the item is lost to both of you. Furthermore, if you have a relic, you must decide whether you or your future self carries the relic. If either you or your future self becomes incapacitated, the other does as well. If you die, your future self disappears. When the effect ends, you and your future self disappear. You reappear 1 minute later in the space your future self occupied, or in the nearest open space it occupies. So that is a very cool, and here it's visualized. That's a very cool spell. It's really not that powerful. Basically, it's just you times 2. So you can double the things that you can do every round, but you can still only do the things you do, and you are imposed a bane for doing so. Okay, so anyway, and then you have time travel. Choose a moment in time up to 100 years in the future. You disappear from existence. When time in the game catches up to time you chose, you immediately reappear in the space you left, or in the nearest open space if it is occupied. That can be pretty gonzo right there. It's a rank 5 spell, but that can be pretty gonzo. And pretty sure I'm going to be using that just to set up a future adventure in the future. Okay, transformation. Transformation magic enables practitioners to assume different forms. Over time, exposure to transformation magic affects your physical form somewhat, causing you to change a bit after each rest. Your hair, skin, or eyes might become different color, or distinctive features could appear or disappear. You might grow or shrink by an inch, or gain or lose weight while you sleep. You never look exactly as you did the day before. All right, so you have such spells as flowing form, mask, animal shape, object form, mist form, speed healing, Metallicus. All right, so we have a sidebar, of course. Assuming different forms. When you assume the form of a different creature as a result of a transformation spell you cast, the following rules apply. Everything you are wearing or holding is subsumed in the new form, though if such an object leaves your possession, it immediately returns to normal. While in another form, you cannot talk. The new form's strength, agility, characteristics, traits, and talents replace your own. You retain your intellect and will. The effect ends immediately if you become incapacitated while in the new form. Any damage in excess of that form's health is dealt to your normal form. You can use a triggered action on your turn to switch between forms. All right, so follow the rules for polymorphing yourself. All right, then we have the water tradition. Water magic controls shapes liquids, moves them, and changes state. When you discover the tradition, generally from a genie, fine scales cover your body. Upon learning a water spell of rank 3 or higher, you grow gills under your ribs and can breathe water as easily as you do air. It's pretty good to know. All right, so this is kind of not only water, but also cold. So you have spells like freeze, then you have spells like ice blast. It's still water, but it's in, the different forms of water, different temperatures. I like drown. Drown lets you basically create water inside the lungs of a creature. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that is it for magic. So that was, what was that? Chapter 7, magic. All right, so a bit long. So, thank you for hanging out with me while I go through the different traditions. Sorry I couldn't go through each spell, but get the core rulebook, read through the spells. You're going to be entertained. It's just entertaining reading, just reading through the spells. And then if you are the type of person who wants to run a caster, this is definitely going to inspire you to do that. So if you dig casters, then you have to pick up the companion, Demon Lord's companion. You also have to pick up Occult Philosophy, which adds 900 more spells and expands the spell range from 1 to 5, or 0 to 5, which is what it is in the core rulebook. All spells cap out at rank 5 in the core rulebook. But in Occult Philosophy, the ranks of each tradition, the spells, extend up to rank 10. So, Occult Philosophy is a must-have. And I believe I included that in my Essentials video way back when. All right, so with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button if you like what you saw. or hit the unlike button. I don't even know if there's an unlike button, but if there is, hit that. That negative attention draws attention regardless. So whole point here is to draw attention to the game, not me. I really don't give a shit about me, but the game is what you need to draw attention to so we can get more people away from the shitty games that they're currently playing to this awesome game that they should be playing. All right, so that's it. I'm out of here. Hail to the Demon Lord. And how do you turn this damn thing off?